talking about handling problems in your group and dealing with particular questions that come up. And we're just going to go through a series of a lot of different situations that come up on the group and give you ideas of how to handle them in case you run into them. So it'd be good to have this information so sometime in the future when you have your own group and something comes up, you'll have some idea what to do. Some of these are fairly simple, others are probably more complex. The first one is you lack confidence in leading a group because you haven't got that much experience yet. What could you do? The first thing is prepare. Good questions. Having it all down so you have quite a bit of material there. So if you get it sort of stuck through your group and things aren't going, those hand grenades I talked about, have good solid questions. Prayer. And experience eventually will get it to the place that you can just naturally lead groups. God can just work through you and they just sort of flows. Another thing to do is give it to God. See, don't go into the idea that you're going to be this guru who goes in there and you're just going to dazzle. You just go in there and you do your job and you say, God, whatever you want. That's what I want in this group, and let the group sort of free so it just flows. Another thing is start as an assistant leader and get experience in another group. We have groups available to you here. If you want to go in and get some experience, you can go in and help lead those groups. And of course, being in a group is very good. Because when you're in there, pretty soon you get used to the flow and realize every leader maybe does it a little bit different. You have different rules. There are many different ways of doing this. But as you get real experience, after a while, it's not that big of a deal. And of course, hopefully you continue to rely on God. The pastor says you're not ready to lead a group. What do you do then? Work on your own progress and learn by attending other groups. The more experience you get, and maybe if your pastor doesn't feel that you can do that at your church, you can learn to lead at another church and get some experience, and eventually he'll believe you have the experience necessary to lead that group. The pastor is not committed to having support groups in his church. First, you can ask him to contact us for more information. Many times, why would they not want to have support groups? Because they're afraid of liability issues. And when they talk to other people and say, a lot of this is not as big an issue that it used to be in the past because there's so many churches that have support groups now and so much that is going on that this isn't usually as big of an issue. Sometimes success in another church will spur interest. Suggest a trial group monitored by him. If he is not sure, say, well, tell you what, how about if we do a group that you come and you sit in and you make sure this is what you want and how it's really going. And of course you can say, pray. Ask God about it. I feel that I'm really called to do a group. I believe we really have some people we could help here. But I'm not going to try and tell you what to do with your church. I'm in submission to you. Last resort, you might have to go lead a group in some other church or maybe some other place if your church is simply not open to it. I'll give you a story. We had a particular couple that came here to get training as counselors, and their pastor really wasn't open to counseling in the church or support groups or hardly anything else. And they came here and they started leading some of our support groups and started counseling people here. And then as they had friends and other people in the church that came to them and asked for help, and they started getting people saved, and this pastor started noticing that there are people in the church started filled with people. And he said, And then he got more people in the church that were getting help, and he heard about the help they were getting and so on and so forth. And now he's totally behind them, and he sends all the people from that church to them, to their counseling, and he's totally open to this. Because he saw it demonstrated. He saw it actually helped the church, it actually worked in the church, and maybe he wasn't even brought up that way. A lot of pastors are brought up believing that if you leave any counseling or you leave any support groups and stuff in your church, they're going to bring in a bunch of psychobabble and they're going to split your church and do all sorts of things. But when they see it actually working, or they see it working in another church, we've had pastors come and visit our groups in our church here to see what is going on. But you might have to prove to them that this is useful, that this will work for them. You have trouble getting started. Now you need to evaluate why. Is it the timing? The advertising? Have you missed God? Is it a lack of support? Lack of experienced leaders? You maybe need to find some additional allies, rebuild your faith, and try again. As an example, we have in the past, for churches that were just getting started, taken some of our qualified counselors or leaders, and they volunteered to go to that other church and start leading the group and get the whole thing going. Another thing you can do is sometimes you need to stack your group. Get a bunch of friends. Maybe half of your group is really qualified group leaders that can really do all this to get this thing off the ground and get it going. The group dwindles to 2 or 3 people. Remember we said that you really need that 4 or 5, at least 5 people to really keep it going. Well, what could you do? Really advertise more. Contact people that have come a few times. There could be many other reasons. It can be leadership, unresolved conflict, the structure's wrong, the wrong topic or material, poor timing, or poor night, conflictual members. Ask the Lord why. Sometimes it's just a particular thing you just need to stick in. And we normally, just because we drop below the magical line of 5, we don't quit the group. We'll keep going and trying different things. And maybe try and bring other people in. Maybe you need to combine that group with another one. We need to figure out what it is and work that thing out and make the whole thing work. Sometimes you just have to stop and start over with a different group. Many times if you just don't have the people that are interested in that particular group right now, or that particular, there's no need for it right now, well then find something that is. An example, one of our group leaders was leading a group and it just didn't seem to keep that core. So now he's redesigning the group in an area where there is a massive need. Because you want to just keep wasting your time if no one's really coming and no one's really interested. No, you need to work that through and figure out what it is and deal with that. The group gets too large. The opposite problem, right? Raise up leadership and split into more focused groups. What we've done before, we've had groups that were 20, 25, 30 people. And there are 2 solutions to it. One is you raise up leaders within that, you split that into 2 groups. But sometimes you lose a lot of people when you try and do that. One of the problems is you're in a small room, it gets too large, you move to another room. Remember I said any changes seem to be a problem? Well, there's another solution. You raise up a bunch of people as assistant leaders, let's just say 4. And so you do sort of an introduction on the information and you say, now let's break up into small groups, and you have one small group in each corner of the room. And it's a fairly big room so the noise doesn't work, but all people then have more of a chance to talk, don't they? Our limit pretty much is about 20. If you've got about 20 people in your group, you need to either do something so they have a more chance to talk, or just the intake in the group is going to take your entire time. You won't have time to do anything else. People not making progress. Evaluate your materials and approach. It's not your responsibility to make them grow, and sometimes that's the problem. They're looking to you to fix them. And so instead of that, you've got to go and put it back on them. You're going to get out of this group exactly what you do. If you're not doing your homework, what are your issues? We want to deal with your issues. Discuss it in the group, or discuss it individually if somebody doesn't seem like they're making any progress. Would another type of group be better for them? See, we're not trying to hold on to people. We're not trying to build empires here. We're trying to be flexible and let God use us in helping these people. Interpersonal tension and conflict. Unresolved open conflict can kill a group. Unspoken tension saps the life out of a group. Our suggestion is you deal with it directly right there. Does it seem like there's a set of dead today? What's going on here? And get them, draw them out, and find out if they have tension or things going on or what it is, and resolve it and let the group resolve it. Try to resolve it openly and express it openly and try to reconcile. Maybe people have to say, well, I'm sorry I did that, but you have to get forgiveness in the group. Boundaries may have to be set in the group. I'm sorry, there's certain things that we have going on in this group we just can't have. As an example, when people are talking, everyone's getting into crosstalk all over the place, and we need to stop the crosstalk. Let's only have one person talk at a time. Members become overly dependent or sexually involved. Could that hurt your group a little bit? Remember, the thing, especially in codependency groups, what do you have to watch out? And the people don't get codependent on the leader, or the people don't get codependent on the group to take care of them and give them advice. You have to keep them responsible, and you have to identify in the group. And you can sort of get that feel when you know that, especially when I talk to you and get answers to all of their problems right after the group and stuff like that. And you have to say, no, it's not my job to fix you. That's God's job. In working with you, I'll help you work it through. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about your alternatives. We'll help you if you need an individual counselor. We'll help you get that individual counselor. We'll get you what you need. Many times what I will say is, it's not my job to give you a fish. It's my job to teach you how to fish. To teach you how to deal with your codependency and then work this through. Share your concerns about interfering with recovery. The term that's used in AA is 13-stepping. That means that somebody in the group is dating somebody else in the group. And what's that going to do? That's going to affect the dynamic of the group. It's going to, both of them, as soon as you start dating or something like that, they're going to be focused on that, not focused on recovery in the group. If boundaries cannot be maintained, suggest one transfer to another group. Usually we don't have both people of a couple in the same group. Why? Because they've got issues, either going to end up working on their issues there, or they're not going to be open to discuss things or to really be honest about what's going on in the group. Because they're afraid what the other person's going to think about them, or how they're going to react, or are they going to get in a fight on the way home if they say this, or can they be honest? If a church discipline issue, turn it over to the pastor for resolution. If they're part of that church, of course. But sometimes you have to actually ask people, either set boundaries. I'll give you an example of a person who is just talking too much. You know, they had all the answers, they're going to fix everybody in the group. And they would try to dominate at least half of the group. What's the first thing you do? You say, I'm sorry, everybody needs to have an equal right to talk here. I'm sorry you've had your amount of time. But this particular person couldn't even get that one even stopped. So the family had to say, well, I'll tell you what. Either you're going to figure out a way to stop yourself from interrupting and sort of taking over the group and so on and talking more, or we're going to have to ask you that if you go, say, let's say a number of people in the group, we had 10 minutes each, and you take 20 minutes, we'll ask you to skip the next group so everybody can make up for that 10 minutes. There are different types of boundaries that we've used in the past. Somebody is unusually quiet in the group. What do you think you could do? Draw them out. Try and get at the topic that they're interested in. Remember, ask them direct questions like yes or no, or what happened in your life when you were 13? You know, specific, concrete questions that there's a concrete answer to. It isn't you know. And at least get them talking and give them some time. If somebody doesn't want to talk in the group initially, we say no problem. You know, and they'll eventually draw out. But if you have someone that just won't talk at all, then you need to ask them specific questions or, what do you think about that? The entire group won't talk, or lethargy sets in. This is about the worst thing a group leader can have, right? You're there and it's like you have to draw it out of them and you're doing all the talking and you can't get them to say hardly anything. What are you going to do? Remember those hand grenades? Kind of come up with some stuff that's really controversial. Another thing you can do, and we use this in counseling too, and I don't really recommend necessarily in a group, but it does work sometimes. As an example, if we've got a teenager, many times teenagers are the ones that refuse to talk, right? So you get the whole family in there, and you get them talking about issues in which they're involved in, right? And especially you get talking about them. They're going to get drawn in. You see what I'm saying? So if you can find the issues that this particular person has, or things that they're involved in, that will tend to draw them and get the whole group moving in a particular direction. Directly confront it. Why is it no one here in this group really wants to talk? You know, you're coming here to get something, but you don't really seem to be willing to contribute. What's going on here? Get them involved in praying more before the group. Maybe they don't feel this is their group. Maybe they just feel you're just running it, and it's your thing. And say, well, let's talk about it. What rules do we want? How do we want this group to be different? What would you like different? Get them involved so they will own the group. People use crosstalk. They speak out of turn, interrupt others. Explain the problem, remind them. If it continues, ask them to take the conversation outside of the group. I'm sorry, what was that you were talking about? Well, if it's nothing to do with the group, if you guys would like to step out and talk about that for right now, that's okay. Come back when you're done. Usually those are things, just pretty simple things like that are enough to help, and it'll work things through. People are giving advice. Why don't we want them to give advice? Because if you give me advice and I take it and it doesn't work, whose fault is it? Yeah. And again, we're trying to fix people. We're not trying to do that. Remember, we're trying to get people to take responsibility for themselves, to get a hold of God and to deal with their life. Because see, if all the answers come from me and I leave, what happens? You don't have any answers anymore. And of course, that's codependency. That's excessive dependence on another person to just give you the answers. It's also a cop-out. I don't have to make up my own mind, right? I don't have to live my own life. I can get other people to tell me what to do. And insecure people tend to do that sometimes. It shortcuts responsibility for and the struggle of your own problem. You tend to blame others when this happens. You need to learn how to solve your own problem. Advice is superficial. People do not do what they do not discover themselves. And somebody just gives you advice, how often do you take that advice? But what if you figure it out and you decide that's what you need to do? There's a higher probability you'll do something. Many times it's used to divert from their own problems. When people are telling stories, notice that in our group people tell stories? That can be useful if it directly applies, but generally that can be a total diversion to somebody else, you know. Well, my grandma did. Was your grandma in the group? Is she coming next week? Or how does that affect you? People feel disrespected. Use I statements. You need to do this. Don't want that, do we? We already talked about this a little bit. Sometimes people won't stop talking. One of the things that's really hard here is figure out how to interrupt. You know, you can have people that are talking so much, they don't even give you a breath in between to sort of, how do you handle that? If you have to, you do something like this. Stop. Now we need to talk about, you're going to do something. Sometimes you have to interrupt people because they're just going to go and go and go and go and go and go, and they're on their own story, and you stop. I'm sorry, but we need to hear from some other people in the group today too. And it's hard to sort of pick that time, that particular spot where you're going to deal with that. Deal with the underlying problem directly. Another technique is, why is it that people want to talk so much and dominate the group? Probably gets very quiet in the group when you ask a question like that, doesn't it? And of course the answer is what? Low self-worth, insecurity, looking for approval for people in the group. And after that's all brought out, how many people in the group do you think are going to talk excessively? In fact, the very people that are doing that are the ones that are going to be stopped the most by that because they want to look good and they want to please everybody. And the people pleasers that are trying to get people pleased all of a sudden find out you're not pleasing people by it. And so many times that's just enough to rein that whole thing in. I already told you that the final one probably is ask them not to attend for a session or something so other people can get caught up. You know, usually that will have enough effect. Someone is overwhelmed with anger, hurt, or fear. I mean, they are just so angry, they are just venting in the group. You have to decide how important. It might be important to just let them vent. If that's what's best for them and the group can take that. You know, you might say at the end of the group, we normally don't do this, but I just felt, you know, God was just showing me this was critical. We have to let this person, you know, in this particular case. We're not going to let that happen each time, but sometimes you just have to accommodate those people and let those people do what you need to do. Sometimes it's that important, it's that critical for them. If too much, have the assistant take the person and deal with them personally. Boy, I see you really got struggles, and this is really, I'm not sure this won't just totally dominate the group. You know, why don't you go with Joe, and Joe will give you some individual counseling in that particular area. If someone gets angry with you, argues, or causes conflict, how do you handle it? First, try to diffuse it. And just say, wow, you really seem angry. And I'm sorry you feel that I'm really controlling this group. How do the rest of you guys feel? You know, or you can say something, you know, there have been times in the past when I was in a group and I got angry and I thought the leader was just doing an absolutely rotten job. And I wanted to straighten him out too, so I understand. What could I do differently that would help you to get more out of this group? See what I'm saying? Instead of, normally, if they're pushing and you push, what's going to happen? Doesn't work. It's just going to go back and forth. The conflict's going to escalate. You're just going to have more problems. So our recommendation is you usually go the soft approach. You usually try to accommodate them, draw them out, and if it looks like it's not working, wait till after the group and then deal with them individually. If the group can't deal with them. Emphasize I statement rules and norms. If you've got norms, say, I'm sorry, but I think I heard a bunch of yous in that statement. Could you restate that using I's of how you feel and what's going on in you? See, you're normally attacking, you did this, you're not doing that, you're... Reframe the conflict as good energy to accomplish something. I've had like couples coming into counseling or so on, like in a group, and they are so angry. I mean, they're spitting nails, and they're, I mean, I'm almost going to have a physical confrontation going here. And I was like, wow, this is wonderful. We've got enough energy to get something done today and really get some change. See the idea? You turn totally around, and that's really true. Remember, the worst thing I'd have is someone who you don't have the energy there. I'd rather have too much energy than too little energy. Someone uses offensive language or talks about inappropriate things. Could that ever happen? Especially in an anger management domestic violence group. Could that ever happen that somebody's words start with F or B or... How do you handle it? My favorite way of handling that one is to say, what do you guys think? Why do people cuss? And why do people yell and scream and get very adamant in their behavior? And of course the answer is because they feel powerless. And where do we see that in our society that it happens all the time? Well, we see it in the day workers and the construction workers and the shipyard workers and the army enlisted people, military enlisted people. Well, why do you think that is? Because that's the group of people that feel powerless and they have no control over their life, right? So in this group, if you use those kind of words, what are you telling us? You feel powerless and you have no control over your life. Or you don't think that we're going to listen. Now, do you think later on people are going to want to be saying that? Oh, you're feeling powerless again, huh? Of course, you could also set it as a norm. You know, I'm sorry, we're in a church, we normally don't do that. But normally you don't just shut it down. Normally you don't just... I think most people have heard a few words like that in their lifetime, and they're probably not going to faint or die on the spot. But generally, don't let that go on, because what if that became the group norm? See, a lot of AA groups can be that way. That's why people come to our groups rather than AA groups, because they don't want all the filthy language and all the junk and all the stuff that's going on. If the person comes to the group drunk or under the influence of drugs, how are you going to handle that one? Well, first you need to really set up a norm. It depends on the level of the intoxication. I mean, if they can hardly stand up and they're... What do you think you need to do? Ask them to come back next week, or ask your assistant leader to take them outside and see if you can help them. Maybe they need to, maybe you can enroll them in the drug alcohol program, or make sure they don't drive home drunk and get a DUI or something, but have your assistant leader try to deal with it and help them out in some fashion. But then you might have to set a group norm and say, we realize that you're having struggles and you need all the help you can, but we realize that when you're intoxicated to that level, you can't get anything out of the group anyway. So either please don't come, give me a call or something, and that'll be fine. Refer them to a professional. Allow the group time to process their feelings about what happened. Anger, their fault for not preventing what went on, fear, and so on. So you might have to get this whole mess. Okay, what do you guys think about that? What should we do about that? We get the group involved in the thing and get the group to deal with that whole thing. And let the group decide what to do. The person feels they got their miracle. We get that in counseling. Sometimes the person comes in and says, hey guys, God met with me, everything is fixed, I have no more problems. What do you know? Try and keep them in the group. Mm-hmm. We're glad that God's working this much in your area, life, and so on and so forth, but why don't you stay here and help the rest of us? God gave you that. Can you give us that revelation too? We could really use you. Because what you really know is they're on a high right now, and they're probably going to have some more struggles. Most of us don't go like that. Most of us go more like that. And something's going to come out later, and something's going to be identified. And so if you can possibly keep them in the group, if you can possibly keep them in counseling, do that. Because over a period of time, they're going to need more help. Not negating faith, but all of us have many different areas in our life, and how does God work? He'll deal with this area out here. You get that area, he's going to eventually take you to the next one, into the next one, into the next one. And so we're not over. But of course, we're also not trying to hold on to them just because we want our group to be a certain size or something like that. They want to go, you let them go. It's evident that confidentiality has been broken. What do you do? Well, you have to, probably the best thing is let the group process it. And then if your group rules are such, it says that we will remove anyone that breaks confidentiality. If the group isn't satisfied that this isn't going to happen again, then you may have to ask them to leave. But if the group is okay and they really repented and so on, I'm sorry, I really blew it, I'm wrong. Now if they just make excuses and junk like that, you may have to just ask them to leave. Because we can't have confidentiality broken again and again and again and still maintain that particular group. Pastor or church bashing. What do you think about that? Somebody is bringing up and they're saying, my pastor is just he's just the devil incarnate. Or he's totally off, or he's totally on wrong doctrine. I mean, that church is an absolute, or, I hate this particular church in town. I mean, I can't believe they call themselves Christians. What are you going to do about that? First, apply Matthew chapter 18. It says, if you have an offense, I'm sorry, it's not to bring it up to us, because if we're not part of the problem or the solution, that's gossip. First, you go to that individual. So I suggest you go to your pastor and deal with that. If you have a problem with the church, go to the board of the church and deal with that. And you have a right to be in any church you want to, but I don't think that's our issue. Now, if you want to say, I feel hurt by what I perceive happened in that church to me, then you can deal with it. But saying absolutes about the church and knocking the church down and blaming and so on, that's not something that's going to help anybody here or help anybody in the group, so we have to handle this differently. Deal with the underlying problem of hurt or rejection. Deal with the codependency, if that's what's going on there, for a program. See, what do codependents tend to do? They go to a group, go to a church, and they're so needy, they go around trying to get everybody in the church to meet all their needs and support them and do everything. They want to be the whole focus of the entire church, right? And they make friends with different people and they try to do all this stuff in the church. And eventually what happens? People get drained. The neediness just drives them crazy. And so they start setting boundaries. And then what does the codependent do when they set boundaries? They get mad. And they go on to the next person, find another person that will listen to them, and tell that person how bad the first person was, and how the first person really doesn't have love, and the first person doesn't really care. You get all that junk. And there's a lot of stuff that will come in when you get church bashing and stuff like that. And you have to get down with the real issue that's underneath that and stop that from going on. The group becomes ingrown, meaning that they're focused totally on themselves. That's one of the reasons we believe offerings are good and fine, because at least they're giving something out. But how can we get some new people into this group? How can we get some new blood in here and get these people to focus on helping other people instead of they're their little clique and they're their little group? You have to try and get them out of that particular thing. Encourage growth. Invite others. Raise up leaders. Start new groups. Have offerings. Teach giving as the answer. Pray for the people. Get praying for the people outside of the group. You know what? Why don't we just take this whole group and let's go on the street and go witnessing? They'll probably get them out of themselves. and doing things. A group participant decides to start his own group. I've got this. I know how to do this. It's almost like, see, it's an unauthorized split. We're trying to raise them, not to split. But this person thinks they're smarter than the group leader, so they're going to try and pull some of your people away and go over to some other church and start their own group, right? Encourage starting other groups when the group is complete and the person has adequate training. We'd love for you to do that. But we want to make sure you have the adequate training, and we want to wait till everyone, the people in this group, have got their needs met, and then we can go on to something else. Encourage them to stay in the group until it gets large enough to split. And then we'll send you out. We'll train you. If you're a good group leader, fine. We'll split the group. Make sure you have good supervision for this guy, by the way. Because usually what does that mean if somebody thinks they're smarter than the leader? Yes, they're going to crash hard. Let leadership deal with the problem. Well, you know, if you really want to do that, I think you need to talk to the senior pastor about that. And of course, you talk to the senior pastor first. When you refer, if in doubt, do the best you can and get help from your leadership. Here's a list of different times you're going to need to refer. Suicide, homicide, child abuse, right? Remember how we handle that? We basically say, if we really think they're going to do it, we'll take them down to the nearest emergency room and let the emergency room deal with it. If we're not sure, one of the things I'll do many times, I'll say, hey, I've got a problem. According to the law, I've got to take you down and check you in. Convince me you're really not suicidal. Convince me you're really not going to do it. And of course, ask them for a plan. Get an idea where it is. If there's any chance they're going to do it, you've got to do what you need to do. But what do they say? I'm just leaving, forget it. I'm very sorry. If you do that, I'll be forced to call 911. And they'll come pick you up. What do you want to do? But that's one of the biggest areas of referral. Self-destructive or dangerous. You find out they're cutting themselves. They're on drugs. They're driving under the influence. Get them some counseling help. Problems beyond your understanding. Counseling help. Problem outside of the focus of your group. We have individual counselors that can probably deal with that area, but that's not the area of this group. We can maybe talk about it one time, but we can't continually refocus the entire group on your particular issue. Disrupting the group recovery process. I'm sorry, but the main focus is helping everybody in this group. If you can't really fit in, then we may have to refer you to another group. They're not getting help. I'm sorry, maybe we're not the right group for you. Here's 5 other groups that you can check out, and maybe you'll fit in better there, and it can help you. Hallucinations and delusions. What does that normally mean? Either we have drug-induced psychosis, or we have somebody that has schizophrenia or something like that, and they need a lot more help, and you need to get them to somebody that can deal with those kind of issues. Heavy long-term depression and lack of rationality. Again, these are all areas that we need to get them someplace. Unable to stop an addiction. You're a drug alcohol support group, and this person just continues to use and use and use, and nothing seems to be working. You need to get him in an outpatient, inpatient program. Get a lot more help. Problems with pedophilia. What do you think about that? Now first, if you got a problem there, that's a reportable thing if they're actually doing it to kids. But if they have those kinds of thoughts, you think they need more than what's just in your group. A whole lot more than what's just in your group. And you need to make sure that they get that help. You may have to even go so far as to say, I'm sorry, but if you want to remain in this group, first, because we're at a church, you have to get escorted all the time. Because you're struggling with those things, and we don't want you to get in trouble and end up in prison, and we don't want kids here to get hurt. Or we're going to have to send you to a group that's outside of the church environment where there are no kids. And we're going to have to get you very professional help in this particular area and do something in that particular area. Now there may be some others beyond this, and of course go to God and say, God, what do I want to do? Call us if you don't know what to do. And we might have some ideas about that because maybe we've seen that before. But the point to there is there are good answers and good things you can do to deal with almost all these issues. Let's pray. Lord, we ask that you would give everybody your wisdom. And Lord, as they go out and maybe start their own groups, that you would help them, Lord, and put it all together for them, Lord, that they could be effective, reflecting you and being tools in your hands in Jesus' name. Amen. Today we're going to be talking about Unit 11. What did you get out of Unit 11? By the way, for people in the video, sometimes what you need to do is just let there be silence. And eventually somebody will eventually talk, right? It's a very good method in leading a group. We don't have to always talk and jump right in there. Especially if you're trying to get through all the people out in the group more.
Well, I was curious why all these East Indians are up in Vancouver.
You know, that's a pretty good diversion, don't you think? Usually somebody doesn't like the silence.
Not quite to the point.
I got a question for you. It says here that we're all on a mission. What's your mission? It doesn't necessarily mean it's your specific call of God, but all of us at least have a general call of God, right? And to be in the church. And God operates through His church. So therefore, at least right now in your life, everybody has a mission of some sort, a particular part that you play in the body of Christ. If you don't know what that is, that's something we need to talk about here in the group. What is your specific mission? You know, this book says God is always doing something, right? And He invites you to be a part of what He is doing. And usually what He asks you to do is beyond where you can, so it challenges your faith, and you have to make changes in your life to see that happen. So my question is, what is it? What's God working in your life right now? What is happening?
Are you asking this as far as our mission in the small group?
Not necessarily in the small group, but you're taking this class for some reason, I think.
Absolutely.
You know? So therefore, there might be saying you have a particular mission that this is part of, but it could be anything. You might, somehow this probably fits into your mission. That's the reason that you're here, taking this particular class.
I can answer this.
Okay, well then answer that one.
What has been an extremely good burden that has been laid on my heart is, as we learned in Evangelism Explosion, we can go out on the streets and we can minister to somebody and we can keep them saved. What's really been laid on my heart is once that person is saved, they need teaching. Because the Bible says without knowledge we will perish. That is a burden that has been laid on my heart, especially in men's groups, because once they get saved, then they need to be raised up into the kingdom, and they need to know the proper ways to walk. And I'm not talking about physical walk, but in other words, there's just so much to learn. And so it's in that raising up, if you will. That is just extremely hard laid on my heart. So.
And I think Peter, who leads the group you attend, that's his vision. So I'm hearing what has happened is that you have gotten the vision from a group that you've been attending, and now you want to take that vision and take it to more people and do more, and that's why And that's how this all fits in, that you're in this particular class, is because you want the skills to go out and do that.
And actually, I actually had that vision before I met Peter, but
Okay.
I mean, the instant, I'm talking the first 5 minutes that Peter and I met one another, it was just like, wow, we have kindred spirits. And so God has really used that, and that has become an awesome friendship. And absolutely, that is the reason I'm in this class right here, is to learn the best way to facilitate a small group.
Okay, small groups, I assume, are part of how you see the best way of reaching men and helping them to become all they need to be.
Well, you know, with men, most of the time, if you get more than 3 or 4 together, you have a fist fight, so that's small group.
Okay.
I was amazed he was confident of even getting 3 or 4 together.
That little humor in there was all.
That seems to be, you know, I feel the burden for teaching, and I have done some teaching, but I also see just a whole lot of immaturity, you know, within the church. And of course that has to do with teaching, but it also has to do with something, you know, it's got to be teaching that reaches to the depth of their spirits to affect, you know, a lasting change. And it just seems to me like there's you know, a lot of people who are just hanging on the edges because they've never really gotten a vision of what God wants. And so you know, yeah, I'm trying to learn what I can so that, you know, I can minister to them and you know, be able to go deeper, even counseling with them, because it just seems to me like that's where people are at. That's where there's just a lot of hurting people out there that are not involving themselves in the church like they should.
So more specific. How do you see yourself fitting in? Because this is all about fitting in to the church of God, which fits into the kingdom of God to accomplish God's purpose.
Well, I'm trying to find out if I have any kind of, you know, real ability, you know, or gifting, you know, for counseling.
Okay, so you'd see yourself then being a counselor in the church, or a pastor in the church, or elder or something.
Well, I'm already an
Already
elder.
Okay.
But
Okay.
you know.
But meaning, I'm hearing the real feel that you want to concretely help people.
Sure.
Got 2 of you left.
I think mine is more directed at teens and parenting. Parents that have kids with disabilities, or I don't want to say disabilities because I don't like that word, but
Challenge.
yeah, but that, you know, today's society, we're faced with so many more challenges than we were when I was a teenager, and it was bad when I was a teenager. And you know, Christ is coming so soon. He's coming back to get us, and these kids are so lost. Their families are so lost, and they have no hope, and they struggle from day to day, you know.
So how would you see in the church, how would you fit into the church to do this? What do you see yourself in the church? What function or what role or you might have in your church to help these teenagers?
Probably somewhere in the youth ministry, children's ministry, or even holding a parenting.
More as a leader, more as a counselor, more as a
I think more is probably a counselor or somewhere along those lines. Holding,
And how does that fit into your church? I don't know, not familiar with
You
your
know
church,
what?
so I'm
Well,
saying, no,
and-
I'm just,
we don't have any that I'm aware of, classes or any support groups that are held at our church. Our church has a school, but we don't, I mean, we don't have any support groups or anything like that offered through our church.
so you might be starting ministry then.
But, I mean, all things are possible through God, and I mean, my heart just goes out to these kids, these teenagers, and these parents that are struggling, single mothers or single fathers. It's not just mothers nowadays. It's a lot of fathers that are raising their teenagers, and they don't know what to do. They don't know where to go, so they just kind of, if you want to call it a wing and a prayer, get me through this day, or some of them even say, I can't even make it through today, And suicide, oh my God, there's a spirit of suicide over this, area, not just Wichita, but the smaller, surrounding areas. I mean, I just got a kid just back out of a state hospital because of suicide. And it's, I guess they feel that there's no hope. I mean, I know that's what they feel. There's no hope, and, why should I even keep on? The devil's got them drugged down in his pit, and they're not going to ever, or don't feel like they're ever going to come out of it. So the best way is just to end it.
I heard something recently, well, actually it's from my psychology teacher, but he said something to the effect that when these kids attempt suicide, which is off from the group here, but when they attempt suicide, they're not really wanting a permanent thing. They're just so discouraged and so down about everything in life and everything that they want to kind of do a temporary death, but unfortunately it's very final. And so that's the sad part. They don't realize that, hey, when you do this, when you die, it's over. So it is a real concern.
One of the things that, the reason that I am so adamant about pursuing what I want to pursue is that I don't know anything about the women's groups because we've never done them, but in the men's groups, we find that the accountability to sin has been washed, diluted, so put out of focus by the world that a lot of them, you could ask them if they're in sin, they couldn't even tell you. I mean, obviously they know they're in sin, but they can't even tell you what sin they're in. I mean, it's been so diluted, and I have found that once people comprehend that sin puts them out of relationship with the Father so much. I mean, it is a major concern that it seems like it's been used by the world just to. It's just been diluted to where it's not even a real concern of the world, but it's a major concern as far as salvation.
But also too, I mean, the Bible kind of quotes, we as parents are supposed to be a mirror image of what God is to our children. Well, and in tying in with what you're talking about with, men, our kids look to us, and if we're not setting examples for them, or if we can't accept where we have been wrong, or where we have wronged another person, they're never, they're not going to become accountable. So the cycle just continues, and it's just getting more evil, or that's not even a word, but more evil. It's just continuously,
True. But that's right. If the parents don't know how to be a parent, if they don't know how to have a godly walk, then the kids don't have a good model to learn from. So it does affect.
But just consider in counseling or in support groups, what percentage of people are now shacking up and have no feelings about it whatsoever and don't feel bad about it whatsoever. Even what percentage in the church are not convicted and are living together.
It's not a lot of difference between statistics inside the church and outside the church, unfortunately.
So how do we relate in the church to do this? So we have these different goals, and different things that we want to do in the church, but the idea of being the Lone Ranger Christian, of just going out there and just doing this yourself versus doing this part of the church, what do you think about that?
It's far more efficient to do it in groups through the church than it is to try to go out and counsel on one-to-one.
We find especially in starting out, if you can have that group of people, but of course you have to relate to them and somehow you're going to have to get them drawn in that in your vision, part of what the pastor's vision is, because the pastor has a primary vision from God, we have to come under that. But then get other people that have this same vision and the same direction, and of course make sure it's from God. But we have to learn how to relate to people. I'm sure you've heard all those statements about, about going to heaven is just fine, but living with the saints down here, now that's the problem.
I've heard it stated that sometimes we can be so heavily minded that we know what to do.
Yeah, that can be true too. So how does this whole thing, how does your ministry fit within? So if we say, basically it's God who's doing something, and then inside of there He's given certain churches certain assignments, and then people within the church that fit within that whole realm. So how do you fit within that realm, and how do we relate to the people in the church?
Well, okay, now because I've talked to you about it before, that I had to have a great deal of patience with my church.
Mm-hmm.
Because Pastor was very firm on what his direction was, what you were saying, and where he wanted to go and how he wanted to do it. And he was very careful because he was a new pastor. And actually, everything he's done has been good. Church has really grown, so on and so forth. But anyway, it's just now beginning to open up to some things. But I find that the way I fit into things is overlaying everything is a spirit of teaching. Because, I try to focus on one thing and it's like, that's not enough. You learn this interesting thing and you learn that interesting thing, and people need to know this. People need to know that. And so that it's that spirit of teaching that wants me to get these things across to people that will help them to grow. In a sense, it's discipling, not totally like discipling, but it's teaching things to people that maybe otherwise would never hear these truths. In Nancy's class today, and I'll finish with this, we talked about the internet and our children's exposure to it, and the statistics and the things that were going on were just absolutely sickening. And I'm thinking, my church needs to see this. Parents need to see this. So I'm not saying that I'm specifically a woman person. I'm going to be working drug and alcohol, but maybe I'm not specifically that. Maybe I'm not specifically children. Maybe I'm not specifically parenting. But I find my place in the church and in the body of Christ with that overall spirit of teaching. Mm-hmm. And that's how I fit in the church, wherever God opens up a door, if you will, for me to teach something that will be a benefit to them in the kingdom of God. That's where I fit.
So you call it even more teaching than it is counseling.
Even more teaching than counseling. But I would even use that. I would use counseling.
To teach.
I would use support groups. I mean, I know there's a different dynamic in all of these. I understand all that. But that overall spirit of teaching is there.
And you found that if you were just there and you just stay there, that eventually the pastures open more and more up to these different things, and you found a place. I think the Bible says that God will make a place for you, and wherever your gift is will find its own place.